Hey true believers, this is Dr. T, and welcome to my comic book channel. Today we're going to take a look at 10 modern Marvel comics that you perhaps didn't know or definitely should want. Stay tuned. First, don't forget to press the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you're really enjoying today's content, press that notification bell. So we're going to take a look at 10 modern Marvel, you could call them keys. In my opinion, some of them aren't necessarily keys, but maybe will be one day. But these are books that you might want to consider. Some of them are pricey. Some of them are not pricey yet, but very well could be in the future. And all of these books, we're gonna also take a look at some of their variant covers, just to help you become aware of what covers or what variants you could be looking for out there. So first, we're gonna start, and also we're just gonna go through. This is only a set of 10 books between 2000 and 2009 when they were published. So the first book that we're going to talk about is Ultimate Spider-Man #1 from 2000. This is the first Ultimate comic. Of course, they came out with Ultimate Fantastic Four, Ultimate X-Men, the Ultimates, which was the Avengers in this continuity, and then of course Spider-Man. It gave them a chance. It gives Marvel a chance to essentially reboot the character, but in a different Earth, so that this could work, so they could keep Peter Parker in 616 and then start the Ultimate Universe. So this Spider-Man #1, it has several different variants. It has the first print, of course, and then it has the Dynamic Forces variant, which I have just recently sent off to CGC. It has the white cover variant, a KB Toys variant, and then after that they released multiple reprints in the years following. And let's take a look now at some of the recent prices this has gone for in a graded 9.8. So we see that on April 6th of 2021, one book went for $500, and then back in March 12th of 2021 went for $370, and back in January, on January 16th, 2021, went for $275. And then also there was a 9.6 price on April 27th for $126. So if the 9.8 is out of reach for you, it's very possible to get a copy 9.6. So now let's look at the next book. This is from 2001, and this is New X-Men #114. This is the first book of the New X-Men title. Issue 113 was just X-Men. And this, of course, is Volume 2, which started in 1991 with X-Men #1 with Chris Claremont and the Jim Lee art. And this book, as you can see the artwork on this cover, this book was in direct response. The drastic costume changes were in direct response to the X-Men movie in 2000, trying to make them more modern, less cartoonish. I remember reading this, and I was still in high school when this came out, and just thinking, what a bizarre switch in costumes. I look back now and think, well, that was kind of neat that they took this risk and made this change. But the biggest significance of this book is that it is the first appearance of the dastardly, awful, devil-like character Cassandra Nova, one of the evilest of the X-Men villains, or any villain in Marvel Comics. And this was her first appearance. And I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't read this story yet, but it's worth reading. And since she is such a crazy, newish X-Men villain, I could see possibly that bringing her in to the MCU. And right now, this book does not go for too much in a 9.8, a CGC 9.8. And so some of the prices right now for this book are in on April 15th of 2021, a 9.8 went for $74. On March 1st, 2021, $75. February 24th, 2021, $61. And you can find them buy it nows for a little bit, for more than those prices. But again, this is a possibly great book to have. This is obviously a raw copy that I have, but I wouldn't mind getting myself a 9.8 just because it introduces such a key X-Men villain. And now moving along, I showed this book a couple videos ago, and it is Black Panther #2 from 2005, which is the first appearance of Shuri. And if you haven't checked out that video, I'll put a link in the description below. You should check out the video and see how much I paid for this very high-grade copy of this book. Now, this book is a little pricier, and this, I believe, is a modern key because of Shuri's role in the MCU, and now her our awareness of her and her future role in the MCU. So the last three 9.8 sales were $760 on May 22nd, $790 on May 16th, and $480 on May 11th. So if that is out of your range, and that very well could be, I don't want to pay that much for this book, but I'd be happy to go for a 9.6, and some of those prices are obviously quite a bit more reasonable. And so on May 12th, this book sold for $390, and then on April 28th, $261, on April 11th, $295, on April 5th, $285, on March 25th, $210, on March 1st, $248, and in February, $285, another sale in early February, $280, and you can see that this book has been reasonable, even though that last big sale of $390 on May 12th, but now's the time, I believe, to buy in at this book, at least at a near mint plus at a 9.6, because if we wait too long, this book's going to eventually go up and be out of range, and then we're talking about looking at a near mint minus, or a very fine near mint copy, which are all great copies of the book, but to get at that higher grade, now's a really good time before this book reaches the stratosphere. Our next book was talked about quite a bit when Infinity War came out, because it was the introduction of Spider-Man's new suit, which appeared in comic books, the Iron Spider-Man suit, in Spider-Man number 529, and this was, of course, during the Civil War run in 2006, so this is the significance, because Spider-Man got a new suit. It was from Tony Stark, just like it was in Infinity War, and so this book is kind of a modern key, but not too much of a key just because of the first appearance of this particular costume, but still a significant book, and anything that has to do with changes in Amazing Spider-Man are always very desirable. And this book isn't too expensive yet. In a 9.8, on May 21st, one sold for $220. Back on April 22nd, $159. Back on April 13th, $180. April 8th, $190. Back in March, there were two sales in the earlier part of the month for $185 and $176, and early February of this year, $157. So it's still possible to get a 9.8 of this book for a fairly reasonable price as significant modern books go. I do not have a copy of this next book, to my frustration, but I don't. But this is Wolverine Origins number 10. It is the first appearance of Daken, and this book came out in 2007. I do have Wolverine Origins books when they came out in that time, but I do not have this particular issue. And this has 3 different variant covers. There's a new stand. There's also a variant of Daken as a child on the cover. And then Joe Quesada did the cover for this really well-known variant of Daken's third claw coming out of his wrist. And this book is super pricey. The last sale on cover price for this book was $1,495. But the first print of the book is still not completely out of reach. There was a 9.8 that went for $414 on May 16th, and then on April 16th, one that went for $395, and clear back in December, on December 21st of 2020, $127.50, and then some 9.6s, and this is more in my range, what I'd be looking for if I was going to get a first print of this. 9.6s back on May 1st, $243, back on April 5th, $150, back on March 15th, $150, and then two sales earlier in March for $124.95 and $82, and even further back in February, on February 15th for $125. So still, this book is within reach, and this is a huge character. I'd be shocked in the next 5 to 10 years if Daken did not show up in the MCU. Again, very edgy character, a great antagonist to Wolverine, and now's a good time to buy. Now's a good time to buy this particular book before the speculation gets out of control. This next book that we're going to take a look at is one of my favorite storylines ever in Marvel Comics, and this is the Old Man Logan storyline. Well, first, let me go over the variants. There are 6 variant covers, as you see, for this book. I have the first print as well as the sketch variant, and here's a copy of CGC 9.8 of the first print of this book, and it also has, it's a wraparound cover. And if you haven't read this story, starting in issue 66 of Wolverine, I believe volume 2, you want to do this. This goes from issue 66, I believe, to 72, and then ends with a giant size Wolverine comic. And I do have that book as well in a CGC 9.6, not a 9.8. And then here is the sketch version of that book, and this is a Michael Turner cover, and so recent 9.8 copies of the first print on March 12th, $175, on February 24th, $150, and on January 28th, $130. And when I follow this book from time to time on eBay, I usually see it go for about $150. So now's a really good time to buy into this book. I know that it was that the Logan movie was loosely based on this futuristic, apocalyptic concept, but it didn't really go too far into the Old Man Logan lore. And so these are still very reasonable books to get up, and Old Man Logan is one of my favorite stories and comics that I own. So moving along, and this book was / is a spec book, even though we know Sam Wilson is the new Captain America. This book has still risen in value, and that's Captain America 34, the first appearance of Bucky as Captain America. And this is the Steve Epping cover, and then there's also an Alex Ross cover, and then there's a Dynamic Forces variant cover also done by Alex Ross. And so this book was the price was reasonable when I got it, but right now, in a CGC 9.8, just sold for $203.21 on May 3rd. On April 8th of this year, $175. On April 7th, $200. And back in January, $96. So you can see that the book has risen based off of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Disney Plus show, and that it's likely going to relax. At least I would assume so, that this book's going to cool off. And Bucky becoming Captain America was in direct response to Steve Rogers' death in Captain America 25 after the Civil War storyline. These next set of books are, I believe, definitely spec books. I already owned a copy for when it originally came out in 2009, but definitely spec books. My brother-in-law and I, Zach Attackery 21, we have purchased several copies of the first print as well as the third print, but this book has 7 different variants, a second print, a third print, a blank cover, a cover variant by, let's see if I can get this, Georgievic, and then a New York Comic Con 2009 printing, limited to only 2,000 copies. And so this is my copy for my collection, Dark Avengers #1, and this is the first appearance of the Dark Avengers, as well as Norman Osborn as the Iron Patriot. So that's the first print. Oh, and then my brother-in-law and I also bought this together, a 9.4 CGC copy of that first print. And then I have multiple copies here of the third print, all going to get pressed in the next week or two. And so we are obviously specking on this book, but I also really liked the story when they originally came out and Norman Osborn established Hammer. These next two books I don't own, but I am actively looking for copies of this book, particularly in a CGC 9.8, though I'm not opposed to buying raw copies of this book. This is Hulk 15, the first appearance of the Red She-Hulk. There is a variant cover, though I don't like it as much as the regular cover here with Red Hulk fighting Elektra. And recently, copies have sold for, on April 27th, $190, on February 20th, $150, on January 29th, for $110, and so this book is still reasonable. It hasn't really gone past the 200. You can look for buy it now books that are at that amount right now, but you don't have to. You can be patient and still buy a good raw copy, high grade raw copy of this book, or just be patient for that 9.8. And this is a spec book, but I was reading Red Hulk when it came out in 2008, and so when She-Hulk popped up in issue 15 and 16, I naturally was interested, and I thought these stories were really well done, introducing this character. And if you haven't read it, I won't reveal to you who the Red She-Hulk is. I guess you could look it up if you want to. The next issue, Hulk 16, this is the first cover appearance of the Red She-Hulk. And in a 9.8, back on April 28th, $125, April 27th, $170, April 3rd, $140, March 21st, $120, March 18th, $130, and February 24th, $127. So still reasonably priced, not under $100, but a lot of CGC 9.8s now, if they're a significant book, we're not going to find them for under $100. So that still seems to me to be a very good price. So thanks for watching this video of 10 modern Marvel comics that you perhaps didn't know or should want. And remember, true believers, comics for life.